the first of our series of programs. We have 4, March, April, May, and June. And it's called Beekeeping 101. And Matt lives right in Pleasant Valley, and he's gonna tell us all we need to know about beekeeping. Well, yeah, more than we know now, anyway.
Oh, I know.
So all the things we need and how beneficial they are to our gardens. And I've been told that there's going to be a prize at the end of a jar of honey for whoever can answer the question that Matt asks.
Okay, Phil.
No, I don't. Everybody can hear me?
Yes.
All right. Well, I left some handouts on the table if you want to peek along as we go. But first of all, the hives, you're going to spend about $500 a hive to get. So more hives, more expense. But the first thing you're going to want to do is get some gear. This is the clean one. So one piece. You don't need them in the spring. Well, I don't need them in the spring, although Susie's seen me get stung pretty bad. And then you can see mine is a little more haggard. So they get dirty. You're not going to keep that from happening. If you want protective gloves, you get protective gloves. Honestly, I use rubber gloves, and it's really just to keep the stickiness down, because they're not going to be sticking your hands. They go to your face if there's a problem. So you're going to get your gear. Next thing you're going to be buying, tools. And these are really the only 2 tools you need, for metal tools, opening hives. And I'll show you a little bit later, but when we're working on the hives, this one's got a nice hook. You can hook it and pull the hive out, or the box, or the frame out. Go back to those few. So now you got your starting up gear. You're gonna want a soft brush for pushing the bees off the frames. When you're checking them, looking for the queen, and just housekeeping of the hives. Kind of important. These are entrance reducers. I've got about 5 different sizes for as I go through the season. In the spring, I use the smallest because it goes right in front, underneath, and it keeps a limited amount of space. So there's a guard at the front of the hive, and they keep all the bad bees out, or raiders out from other hives. Now you're gonna get your bees. You can get bees a couple different ways. These are called packages, and they have about 3 pounds of bees in them, and the queen. The queen gets her own little cell. She gets locked in up top, and actually I'll use this one. This is what they're using more now than the wooden ones. But so you order your bees, this comes, you go, okay, there's another board that goes on top of this, you pull off, a little cheap, I use a magnet, you pull this container out, and now what this container is, it's filled with sugar water. And you can see there's a couple holes in the bottom. So when they're in transit, they've got sugar water to eat. They go through it in like 4 or 5 days. So the bees I get pursue, are coming from California. I pick them up in Pennsylvania. By the time we get back here, there's probably a quarter of this left. So we gotta move along. So back in this one, I pull that out. I've got 3 pounds of bees in there, about 15,000 bees. So I can cover it up. I get ready for my hive. I take the queen out, shake it, keep her off it. I put my board back. I guess it should go down to the bottom of this. It's gonna be a lot of back and forth here. Apologies. She'll go into the hive. And I'll probably do that afterwards. But we'll hang her in the middle, and I just stake her in.
Now, Matt, is a hive all those stacks one hive?
Nope, so in the spring, he's catching me. We're gonna just use one. When I first get to 15,000 bees, this one's filled with honey, so, oh, it's dripping, I don't wanna get it all over. We'll use this up here. So we're gonna have one hive one box, say, and this is a brood box, they call it. So the queen comes in, I get my hive, excuse me, my package. I've got my hive set up. In here is just plastic frames, and they've got the little dimples for, individual cells. These are actually coated in wax, so it's not just plastic. So I'll pass them out. You can feel the wax on them. Just pass them around. But you can feel the wax on it. And when we reuse them from previous years, we'll actually clean them off and then re-wax. So we've got our 15,000 bees. I've already put the queen in here. She's pinned in here. She's got a plug. You can see how she ate her way out. It's fondant, it's a little sugar. And it'll take them about 2 or 3 days to eat through that sugar to release her. And that gives the hive additional time to bond with the queen with her pheromones. So once I've got the queen in there, I'll take 3 of these or so out. Literally, I pour the bees in, bounce them in, shake them, and then I'll set this. I'll just put this on the ground in front of them, and they'll already know her pheromone, her scent, and they'll make their way up to her afterwards. So this is all set.
So they don't fly away when you do that?
No, because they already know her. So when I do it, like this spring, I'll have 13 hives starting. I'll do all 13 hives, and 99% of the bees will go back to the queen that they were shipped with, because they know her scent. And what you'll see out of here, out of the front, you'll see a couple bees flapping their wings. They're flapping their wings. They're spreading her scent.
Oh.
And they'll push that scent out. And that's how we actually capture, later, swarms of bees. I'll find the queen, I'll put her in a half-empty box. And then once I see bees flapping the wings, I know I got her, she's in there. And all the bees will just follow one after another coming in to say hi. And then,
And you've got all your gear on while you're doing this?
not for swarms typically. Swarm, everybody's panicking on a swarm. They see a giant pile of bees. They're the most docile thing ever. I can reach right in, I've done it. Pick up a handful of bees, shake it off. Once you find the queen, you get the queen and jump it around.
Now, how does the queen get out of that little thing in there?
So, as she's hanging in here, just hanging out, she'll be between 2 frames, like this. There's one hole at the bottom that's plugged with sugar. Sometimes they have attendants, they don't always have attendants. The queen will have a couple friends in the cell with her. But the bees outside will come and they'll start eating away at that sugar. And it takes them 2 or 3 days, and she's free. And now she's in the hive. They're already working away. First 3 days of bees' life, they're cleaning.
It'll be done in a minute.
Day 4 to day 7, they're making wax, building their home. But so we've got
One queen per hive?
one queen per hive, although every once in a while a year where there's multiple queens, 2, maybe a mother and daughter, and eventually one of them will go.
Is that box there, is that considered a hive?
This is considered a brood box or a hive, and it grows through the year. So in the spring, I'm only gonna have 1 box. And if you drive by and you see me and I got 2 boxes, sometimes I put an empty box on just to pour all the bees in, because it's easier. But if I separate it, I pour the bees down in, and then I slowly close them and I put the other frames in on the outside. They'll be leaning out like this with a pile of bees in the middle. And as the bees start moving around, they'll start hanging back to the straight up and down.
How
how long does a queen bee live? And what happens if she dies? How old is she? Do you know how old she
So-
is when you get her?
Yes, you kind of do. They're a little bit more narrow. If you're looking at the pictures on the very front, this should be the question. The queen is right there. She's a little different than all the other bees.
Who's supposed to spot the queen?
We have to find her?
Can you find her?
She's her?
She's longer body. Her torso,
Right
the
here.
body of her is about twice the
Yeah.
torso
Right there?
of a worker bee.
Yeah, right.
And then you have,
Right in the middle, the
She
golden
doesn't
one.
really look that great.
That one?
Is this what we?
you also have drones.
This one has longer, thinner body.
Yeah, right here.
This one right here.
But, so she's gonna last a year or two.
Queen?
I mean, she
Yeah, I know.
ages pretty well.
I think she'd be more impressive.
Or they've replaced her. I don't mark my bees typically. Some people, you know, and I've got to put a dot on the back of the queen just because it's easier to find her when you're looking going in. I don't do that very often. Just, I think if you look in your hive and you see that you've got
Right.
brood babies, both covered, and then you can actually see tiny rice pieces, larvae, and then these little tiny white dots, and those are the eggs. You know you've got a queen, and that's when I stop digging through the hive because I don't need to interrupt them anymore.
Would you only have one queen baby?
One queen per hive.
Right, but could
So-
she give birth to more than one queen?
So the queen will lay between 1,000 and 3,000 eggs a day.
I guess so.
She, yeah. Forget about the alimony. And I'll jump around. The drone, the daddy, he mates once, and his parts fall off, and he dies. So when she goes out and flies, she'll mate 8, 10, 12 times. And then she'll land, and she'll wait for one of her group to go find a new home. And that's a swarm. And they're meant to swarm. Swarms are good. If you see them, you know, you call the state, and there's a whole list of people that will go out and pick up swarms. And, you know, some people see a pile of bees on their car, their tractor, and, oh no, what do I do? It's a great thing, and you literally, you could go right up to them. They're flying all over you, they're not aggressive, they're totally docile, and you can push the bees around looking for the queen. If you find the queen, you put her in a queen clip. And literally, you just get her, and you can pick them up too if you're careful. But it's easier to put her in a queen clip because her torso is a little bit bigger than the worker bees. Worker bees can go in and out of these little slots. She got hips. She's got childbearing hips. It doesn't work. So once I have her in here on a swarm, I can just take this because the bees that are with that swarm have already bonded to her pheromone smell.
So they'll follow into
They will follow it. I will take this and hang it right like that and walk away. I'll go have a cup of tea and you will see the bees filing in through the front door because they will smell her. And you know, a lot of times I'll have them in the tree and I'll put an empty box and then a full brood box like this with the frames and the empty box on top. I'll put it on a ladder, shake the branch. Bees will all fall in, and I'll throw, this is called the inner cover. I'll throw this on top, and once I see, there's a hole in the top, once I see the bees circling the hole, flapping their wings, I know she's in there. Because they're trying to spread her pheromone to get all the other bees to come in and set up a new house. So, I mean, it's very easy to work with swarms. People get scared by them because, I mean, I've had swarms, 30, 40,000 bees. I mean, just piles of bees. And, you know, people, what are you gonna do? And I'm in shorts and a t-shirt. They don't bother you. They're, you know, and you can. I was asked before if I'd been stung doing swarms. I was doing a swarm in Torrington. The police, one of the policemen who lives in town here called me to got a swarm, and I got stung my fault, because as I was putting brood boxes in my truck, I had some on the tailgate and I squished them. So they stung me. But that's, you know, my fault. 90% of the time working on beehives, getting stung is your fault. It's not, you know, the bees, they know, and bees will recognize people, they'll recognize your face as you're working with them all year. So the more you go up and work on your bees, the less chance you have of getting stung. I'm working on my bees. I don't get stung very often on my bees. When I go elsewhere, yeah, I'll get stung because they don't recognize me. It's just, I mean, they're a fascinating, you know, group.
Are they recognizing your face or your scent?
Face.
Okay.
And scent, I'm sure it's scent too. But I go up and, you know, as I walk up to my bees, I've got, you know, a couple lines of hives, and I'm looking at the front of the hive to see what kind of temperament they are. Because if they're all flying out and they're angry, I'm gonna do it a little different. I'm gonna put on my gear. But a lot of times I'll go into the hive, I'll just check, and you know, poke around. Nope, they're good. I'm free. I'm out. And I walked up last year, last year, and I was so focused on bees, I didn't look 20 feet past the beehive area, and I had a black bear there. So that'll be a different part. So also with the tools, now I went back on tools and equipment, fence. So we've got so many bears up here. And I've got, last year, literally I had 6 different bears coming down every day. And, right, so what do you do? So, electric fence. My fences are solar powered, they're 6,000 volts. And they will burn through your skin at dawn. That's the first line of protection. And then also, I started making these stands for my hives because I can strap the lids down. So here we are in spring. I've got my one brood box. That's my inner cover. And if you notice, there's a little doorway up here. That's just for ventilation. And the bees actually use it to come and go. Got my top cover. Well, that's real easy. Bear comes up, knocks it, hive falls over because it's not that heavy. This is pretty light in the beginning. So on this, we strap them down. Now the bear is going to have to work to get his, you know, prize. Just a little bit of protection with the fence and that, and I've been lucky. I mean, with all the bears that we have.
So you do that because they could get over the fence or through the fence?
They hit the fence in a different spot every couple of days and break it. I put more posts in. They break the wire every once in a while. But yeah, they test it. It's like that, was it Velociraptor movie where they hit different spots all the time. They're doing the same thing. I mean, they're not done. And they know. So also in the spring, I've got my electric fence on and I run it year round. I'll put a piece of bacon on it or a protein patty because bears come up and say, "Ooh, it smells good," and they lick it. They get a shock in the mouth. That bear doesn't come back for the year. It's just a way that you don't have to hurt the bear bad. You train the bear, and you know, that's easy way. So the other way of getting bees. These are called package. 3 pounds of bees. This is called a nuke. It's like a mini hive. It's got 5 frames, 30 frames. And this is another thing I was going to show you. That's why I brought this one. It'll have a queen in here. She'll already be out, cruising around. And it'll have 10,000 bees in here. Not a full hive. You pick this up. It normally has a piece of screen down here to block it in. Come to my existing hives, take this off, carry it over, and I slowly transfer 5 of these into one of my boxes. Then I always save these because I use these grow swarms and different stuff like that. That's kind of the 2 ways or 3 ways, swarm, package, nuke, to get bees. Get your bees into your hive. So you're also gonna need a smoker. And it's filled with wood chips. People can buy pellets that burn. Pine needles work well. I use a mix of cherry sawdust, or coarse sawdust, and pine needles, and it stays lit for a good long time. You need that, and it's also kind of training the bees. Every time I come up to the beehive, I come up, 2 puffs, close the lid, put my smoker down. They know it's me because you've been doing it. They know I'm not in there to raid them, to beat them up. And then when we're working on them, you also use this, because what this also does is it masks the smell. If you're up by beehives and you smell bananas, you get about 3 seconds. That's what the pheromone smells like that they release as a defense warning. And I've smelled it only twice, and literally within 3 seconds, luckily I had a suit on, I was covered in bees. And so no eating bananas. Their defense, their call out, their warning to everybody, hey, there's something going on here. So they release a pheromone smell, but it smells like bananas. So don't eat bananas when you're working on bees. Because you're gonna breathe out, they're gonna say, oh, what? So, it literally, it smells like somebody next to you is eating a banana. And, you know, just, not fun. So then, the queen that goes in, there's 3 different ways they come, I should say. I showed you this one. Just a simple screen face with an end on it. This is similar, but it's got a longer tube. It's got more sugar in it. So when you buy queens on themselves, they'll have, 1 or 2 worker bees or attendants with the queen in here, and now they have plastic. And a lot of the plastic packages come with the plastic. But she sits in there, you can use them. So if I'm breeding queens, and that's a whole other thing, I just buy packages of the wood ones because it's easier. Maybe I'll try to touch on that at the end.
Did you say breeding queens?
Breeding queens, so their goal is to swarm the hives. So if they get tired of a queen, you think it's a monarchy, it really isn't. The body of the hive decides, we want a new queen, you're out. So they start bringing in what's called royal jelly. And I should say the only difference between a queen and a worker bee is what she was raised on when she was a larva. And it's royal jelly. It looks like mayonnaise. They use it in the cosmetic industry.
Right.
It's just, there's all kinds of uses for it. But when the larva eats that, she morphs into a queen.
Where does it come from?
The bees make it. Just like they're making, they call it bread pudding, and most of the cells here, and it's another thing, these are all the same size. Most of these, they'll put a little bread pudding in the bottom, and then the queen will come by and lay an egg on it. And the bread pudding is what the larva feeds on until it's old enough to come out. So,
So they don't just make honey, they make all.
nope.
But how does the queen decide or who decides if a particular larva is going to get the royal jelly?
The body of the hive. So that's what you'll see midsummer. And all of these will be capped like this. This is all honey in here. There's probably 100 pounds of honey in this box right now. But all of these will have larvae, different stages. Egg, and then they grow into a larva, and then they emerge. They're not born, they emerge. They come out as an adult bee. And then for 3 days, all they do is they clean their little cell and clean the hive. And then the next couple days are producing wax and then they go on to, you know, other chores, but they have a whole litany of chores that they do.
And it's
then this
always
is
in
what
the
you-
same order?
Yep, yep, so, and this is what you want, this is the honey. So, more on that in a minute. So, now you got the queen in, you know, different. Different levels of queens, now you're going into summer. You've got one box on. Once you get 7, there's 10 frames, I should say, in each layer. Once you get about 7 of them filled, so 70% full, I put a second box on. So, here comes my second box. It's summertime, and it varies on how long it takes them to fill it. So, and I killed all the bees right now because I forgot to feed them. So in the spring, after I put the larvae in, you're gonna wanna feed them for a little while, because like right now, I pick up the bees in April. There's not that much going on. There's tree pollen, and there's, you know, a few flowers going, but nothing like midsummer. So you're gonna feed them. So you got a couple different types of feeders. She'll start. This is an in-hive feeder. I'll fill it up with 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 sugar water. And literally just drop it in. They will climb in and out of that feeding. I'm not a huge fan of it because it gets messy and it gets covered in wax. And so I started changing these in the fall. This is a top feeder. And if you see, there's a little slot here and then a screen. And they just climb up and climb back down and start feeding away. That's better in the fall because in the fall they're also raiding each other. But in the spring, I use a front feeder. And this literally slides right in the front door. Sits right there. Bees go out, flying around, they come back, they're thirsty, they're hungry, they go right to that and then up. Bees will take the pollen or the sugar water. They've got 2 stomachs. They'll put it in their first stomach. They'll go up top, they'll regurgitate it, another bee will take it up in their first stomach, and then they put it away as very thin honey. The honey will get thicker as the year goes on because this entire hive, the way it's set up, is drier. As the year comes up, I showed you the hole in the top for the airflow. Airflow is coming in the front door, and believe it or not, just out this little hole. They're in there flapping their wings on the comb, drying the honey. So it's honey that you take and the honey that's on the table has to be under 18% liquid. Hydrometer, whole nother thing. Gotta have a hydrometer. This tells you how, just like a radiator fluid, it tells you how much moisture is in it. If it's over 18, you're gonna end up with a lot of mead, because it's all gonna turn to alcohol. Some people like
Yeah, I guess.
where am I here? So we did the tools. If you look in the pages, or you'll see the page, halfway through, you'll see now, you know, we're into summer. We've got 2 boxes on, and a couple times a week I'm up looking at bees in the boxes. If you look at the picture down here, those are queen cells. They look about the size of a peanut. And you either want them or you don't want them. If I'm looking to breed hives, and I forgot a breeding note, but I will go in and very carefully remove those. And I will put them into, figure a hive about that tall by that, very small. It's all styrofoam. I'll put that inside of one of those breeding notes. I'll take about 1.5 cups of bees, I'll put it in there with it, I'll leave the door shut, put the top on, leave it overnight. They will actually bond to the scent coming through that peanut, because that's the larva of a queen. And once she comes out, I'll check it every couple of days, and at that point, after the first day, it's open, so they're flying in and out. They're building a little, actually it's right there. They're building a little baby hive will check, there's 3 frames on it, I'll check the frames, and once I start seeing eggs in there, I will move her into a hive with a lot more bees. And the same thing, I put her in a queen clip, or I put her in a bee transport, the little cells. I'll hang her in a hive with a lot more bees, and I'll take frames from other bees, making sure there's not a queen in there, and I'll put her in with a whole new set of frames, leave the door shut for a day. They'll bond to her because she's protected because she's in that cell. If she's just running around and they don't like her, they may just kill her.
I was gonna ask you, what happens if there end up being 2 queens?
One of them will die. You know, they'll live, I mean, I've seen it where, you know, pictures where they say, oh, the 2 queens are living in this hive for a few days maybe, but eventually it's meant to have 1 queen, and either the old queen will fly off and take half the hive with her, or the new queen will go when she goes on her mating flight. And,
Is that what you come across when you get a call, say there's a swarm on the
yep.
car, and it's
It's-
because maybe 1 queen has gone off with,
because somewhere,
there's been a
somebody didn't
revolution?
check.
So how do they decide which bee gets the royal jelly?
It's all up to the worker bees and the attendant bees and, you know, housekeeping. They all,
Do they vote?
yeah, basically, they decide we need a new queen for whatever reason. It could be that she's getting old, she's not producing much, or she's mean. And, you know, sometimes you get a hive that's just plain and simple mean. And to change the hive, you go and you take the queen out and give a new queen. And it'll change the personality of the hive. I've seen people, oh, the bees are too angry, I can't stand them, I can't stand them. Change the queen.
Really?
Because she sets the tone. Now, the other thing about mean queens is typically they produce a lot of honey. So I don't mind.
Uh-huh, yeah.
You know, they're demanding of their
Okay.
people.
Okay.
And, you know, they start pushing them and you do get a lot more honey.
Now, is there a purpose to the honey? I mean, is it their food or something?
That's their winter food.
Okay.
So, when I said we had 2 of these, and I put the second one on after the first one's 70% full, once this second layer is about 70% full, and some people do, some people don't, this is called a queen excluder. Same thing, she's downstairs laying lots of eggs, so she got some hips. She can't fit through here, but the worker bees can. Put that on there, and now I'm gonna put a smaller box on. Why smaller? Because it's too darn heavy to pick up these. Same thing, but shorter. This will hold a couple gallons of honey by the time you're stripping it out. And what I've kind of figured out is, at the end of the year when I clean these out, each box has about a pound of wax. And it comes with a couple gallons on it. You're getting 2 gallons per box. I've got a couple people that buy it. I've got a girl in Rhode Island that makes
Can
creams and lotions and different stuff. It's different, so if you're burning candles in the house and you get the black soot off the wall because it's a petroleum product, if you burn beeswax candles, you don't get that.
Yeah.
And I mean, we make candles just to mess around, but you know, it's a totally different, you know, wax.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so I go through last year, I think I got rid of 30 pounds of wax. But it's, you know, it goes, and they love it, they love it. So, midsummer, I've got my honey box. And same thing, I'm still checking the hive. The pain is, I gotta take this off, and I'll put it on my next hive over to inspect the rest of the hive. Now we're midsummer, so this thing is chock full. It's got all kinds of stuff. You can buy these, I just made this, hang it on here, and I take my first frame out, and I'm just checking, making sure I don't have any of those queen cells. Because I'm not looking to breed queens for them, I don't want them to swarm, I want to control their swarms. So if I have a queen cell, I take it off and I put it in a breeding room. hang these, I'll hang 3 of them out here as I'm going through. I'm looking for the queen. I'm making sure we don't have any queen cells. I finish this box. Guess what? I got another box to go. I gotta go down the box, take this off. Again, when I take this off, I'm standing it up like this because I don't want to lose a queen. And typically I'll have the cover right next to me, so I'll put it in the cover. Because if the queen falls off, you're in problems, and you miss it. So, and then I'll check this off. Same thing, I'm gonna take my first one off, and all I'm doing is I'm looking for queen cells, I'm looking for drone cells. Now, back up. I told you all these were the same size.
And when he takes them out, they're covered with bees,
Yeah.
both sides.
There'll be, 1,000 plus bees on this. I told you all these were the same size. They're not. Drones, the males, the unfortunate ones, their cells are a lot bigger than these. And I didn't have any, I looked to see if I had any. And then you have the third size, which is the queen. She's literally a peanut. So if you have larger ones and you start seeing lots of drones, you know they're thinking about having a revolution. It's queen. So I scrape drone cells off and the larva, and I just put it off to the side. They clean it up because I don't want a lot of drones, because all they do is sit around, eat, and wait until the queen's ready to mate. I'm not gonna pay for that. So we let him go and get rid of them. But so I'm inspecting every couple of days all the hives. And that's kind of what takes a lot of time through the course of the year. But the more you do it, the easier it is because they recognize it. And a lot of times I'll look at the bottoms and I'll see a queen cell hanging off. And I'm like, all right, yeah, I gotta go through everything. And again, once I get the queen cells, then I go back to my breeding nukes and setting all that up. This bag. And if anybody tells you they know everything about raising bees, they're lying. Because as soon as you figure it out, the bees change the rules. They just don't. So now I got all my honey, and I've had hives with 5 boxes of these filled with honey. They're stacked this high. I start bringing them in, literally, this is filled with bees. I'll sit there, kind of sweep them off gently, shake them, tap them, and then I'll put them into a different box. I bring that in and I let it sit for a little bit until I get enough of them. Where?
When you're shaking them off, you're just letting them go wherever they wanna go, because they're gonna go back into.
I'll shake, if you tap once, it's okay. If you tap too many times, you're gonna upset everybody. But no, I mean, a lot of times, we'll blow them, or, and this one thing. Before I start collecting honey, there's another, looks like this, except it's got a triangle and a screen on it. When bees hit a wall, they turn right. They never turn left. It's called a bee escape. I'll put this under here, my bee escape. Apologize for not bringing it. I'll let it sit for a day. I'll come back next day. Like 98% of the bees are gone. They've gone out, and they're not coming. They can't get back in because they hit that screen. I go right, that takes me outside again. So they just stop coming up here. And then I take this off, and then there's a lot fewer bees. Just straight off. So I'll have, I think I have 50 or 60 of those boxes. Susie gets more honey than me. I don't know why. So Sue Larson is in Riverton. She's got 3 hives. 3 hives.
Starting 4.
Oh, that's right, because you had more bees coming. She had no die-off this year, which is crazy.
Yeah, so what happens in the winter time with them?
So the bees, they don't have a big cluster. So in here, I've got 2 boxes filled with honey. 200 pounds of honey, thereabouts. they will start at the bottom and form a ball. Now figure a ball through 3 hives, or 3 frames. And she's in the middle. They keep her at 92 degrees all winter long. It's good to be the queen, it's not good to be the king. So that's called a cluster, and they will just stay in there all winter, and they will slowly migrate from the bottom box and work their way up, eating. And when they get to the top, if they're, you know, they came up too early and there's still some honey down bottom, they never go back down for the honey. It's one of the weird things, they just, you know, the bees are incredibly smart, except for that. So in the wintertime, we'll put sugar patties up here, and I have a different cover. This is my summer inner cover. This is my winter inner cover. And you can see it's used. It's filled with this propolis, the red stuff. This will go on here. This is just ones I made. This is a moisture board. So any moisture trapped actually gets absorbed in here, and then a little insulation. But it's got room up here for me to put sugar, you know, fondant or sugar blocks. And that's my insurance. If the bees go all the way up, and they're not gonna go back down to get 5 pounds of honey they left on the bottom, they'll eat the sugar the rest of the winter.
So the queen's in the middle, are the worker bees feeding her?
All year round. She's so busy summertime laying eggs, they're bringing food to her. It's, yeah, it's good to be the queen. Except you got 3,000 babies a day. So we went through feeding again in the fall. I've taken my honey boxes off. I harvested maybe 6 gallons on a hive on average.
And you've left some for the bees?
So these 2 boxes are completely filled. So afterwards, you can take a peek at the lower box. I mean, this is one of the hives that died. I'll challenge you to pick it up. It's heavy. It's a better part, 100 pounds of honey in here. So on a thick frame, both sides, it's solid honey. And again, every single one of them. So that's why in the summer, you wait till the first one gets filled, because if you put a second box on too soon, they're moving on up. They're going upstairs. It's nice and warm up there, and they're not gonna fill the bottom. So that's why you wait till about 70% gets filled. And when they need more room for brood box for the babies, then I put the second box in. And they're just happy-go-lucky, making eggs, making larvae. So they bring in a couple things. They bring in pollen, and the pollen they mix with honey to make this bread pudding, they call it. And the bread pudding, they put in the bottom of each one of these cells. And then the queen comes by, puts an egg on top of the bread pudding. Now, if you're lucky, you go into a cell with a little royal jelly. And you start eating the royal jelly, and boom, you're a queen. And then, like I said, the 3 different sizes, and there's all different kinds. These are easy. You can get these that are actually a sheet of wax, and you've got wires running back and forth, and you can melt them in. But for doing it in bulk, this is a wax-coated sheet. I clean them every year, put it in, I'm ready. And, 10 hives, you're gonna have 200 of those sheets. So, I read it. So if you see this one, I scrape these down and I flame them, because I don't want any mites or hive beetle eggs. So that'll come into the next thing. Summertime, you got a couple problems. You got hive beetles, which haven't had much of a problem. I found one hive with a hive beetle in it. But then you also have varroa mites. And the varroa mites, actually I don't know if I have a picture, they will actually land on, climb in, they'll go on the larva, and they'll go on the bees. And it's like a cat. And they're sucking the life out of the bees. So you end up with a weak hive. To deal with them, there's a couple things. We use strips, and then this is an oxalic acid. It's wood acid. You can get it anywhere except if you're doing honey, you have to buy this special container. It's the same formula, but they went to the USDA and got approved. And it's 99.8% oxalic acid or wood acid. And you see my little tiny spoon here? Take one scoop, you put it in the middle of this cooker. This hooks up to a car battery. And this is, we'll do it a couple times in the summer. Slides right in. I hit the button and I cover the rest of the entrance with just a wet towel. I'll turn it on. It smokes up in the hive. I'll pull it out. I'll leave it covered for another minute or 3 minutes. And that oxalic acid kills the mites, the varroa mites. So you don't want to do it too much on the bees because it will erode the antennas and the wings and stuff like that over if you do it way too much. But I'll do it, you know, in the spring. I get these, they're mite away strips. And I'll put strips on. It's a 2-week or 3-week process. Put one strip on in the middle of the hive for a week. You come in a week later, you take it off, you put another strip on, and that works really well for the varroa mites. Now, the U.S. didn't have them until 20, 30 years ago, I think they came in. And then it changed beekeeping forever. So that's my thing, and I'll do this, like I said, I'll do the mite away strip, and then I'll do this midsummer, and then October, just before they lock down. And it just gets rid of all the mites, because if you have your mites in your hive, you're not going to survive winter. The bees will die. We obviously did them good enough on Sue's bees.
We did good.
And if you want to take this tonight, because you're going to have to do yours, I would do it.
Be the oxalic acid.
If you have mites, your hive, one, they're not going to be as friendly, and they're not going to survive the winter. Just because it's like having a bunch of ticks on you. I have pictures in here, but you'll see 7 mites on a single bee, and it's sucking the life. So that's the pain in the neck-side.
Why do you still have honey in the bottom box there?
To show you. So this year I had a bad diet. And nationwide it was like 68% of bees died this year.
Oh, wow.
Coming up with. So that's one of the dead out, they call it a dead out. I already started cleaning hives, and that was filled with honey. And a lot of the bees died early. We had that real bad cold snap in the beginning.
Is that the reason for the die out?
I didn't have any mites. There's no evidence of any mites. And that would be the natural thing to think mites. If you have, like your next door neighbor planting all kinds of Home Depot stuff, well, Home Depot gives a warranty on their plants because they treat them with pesticides. But if you look at your dead bees, crazy people do, you will see their probus, their tongue sticking way out. And you know that was chemical. Yeah, they were poison. In the winter, it's if they're facing up, they starve.
Oh, wow.
You may have 10 pounds of honey down at the bottom, 30 pounds of honey down at the bottom, but they went past it, and they're not going to go back down again. That's the frustrating part. So now in this fall, I've got all this honey inside, and it drives my wife nuts because I'll have 2 stacks of these in our kitchen. This is called the centrifuge, and there's a spinner in it. It spins around. This one I can put 8 frames in. And literally, I'll take this. There's a couple different tools. I use, it looks like a little planer. to open up all those cells that you see
Oh,
in there.
yeah.
But they also have little forks and they have heated knives. Heated knives because I use spacers in here, so my wax is a lot wider than the frame. So I cut off a third of the wax, the cells, before I even start spinning it. So I use a planer, and it just sits on top, and you just pull it, and it pulls the tops off. But I'll do 2 of them in each one. So they're all tipped up. And then spin for a few minutes. Susie knows we get completely sticky and nasty. That'll fill up this bucket. Down in the bottom, there's 1 drain, and then we go into a 2-part screen that keeps any of the wax out, or if there's an antenna or a wing or something, that cleans it.
Are there any larvae or bees?
Nope. So this box, because I've got the queen excluder,
Yeah,
she can't come up with the eggs.
Oh, right.
So this
that
box
one's
is all
easy.
clean. It's
Right.
all nice, clean honey. As you use the frames more and more, they get darker. And it's really, because they got dirty feet, they're walking over it all the time. So your lower boxes, you'll see a much darker honey, a darker wax. It doesn't melt down the candles very well. It's just got so much crud in it. But up the top ones are phenomenal for wax. So each one, a couple gallons out of each box, if they're full. And what I have in here, these little metal spacers, they're add-ons. Because if you don't use them, you're putting all your honey in, and you gotta go into every single hive, set this in there and make sure they're even. Nice spaced out. It takes too long. These are cheap. Once you set them up in the spring, you're all set. But this is another way of spacing the boxes. Now down below, we don't have them, so I do have to use this. And you just slowly work it down until they all fit nice and neat. Once they're fitting nice and neat, then you can draw it this way. I don't have all the frames, so it's not working right. And it gives the bees a nice even spacing in between each of these hanging frames. Because if you don't have them, then all of a sudden you get one frame where they're building, it's called bridge comb. So you got all these comb, nice neat comb. And I got too much space here. Well, they're gonna build a little bridge going across. And it's a pain in the neck to clean the honey. Because now I take it out, I break it, I'm losing larvae, I'm losing honey. But the good thing is, you put it there, and it's, they'll come back and clean it up. So, after I'm done with this, and I've done spinning 100 frames, take them all out. Now the hard part is you gotta clean this. Take the top off, take this outside, and I put it on my patio and I walk away. The bees come down and they make it spotless. They work well. And even when I'm done with the frames, not the brood boxes, but the honey frames, I will leave these outside. And some people say, oh no, it's teaching them to rob, or it's teaching them, you could have disease between, my hives are so close. I literally put them up like this, and I come back the next day, and there's not a speck of honey in here. And then I can go and just literally with a putty knife, use a 6-inch putty knife, lift it up, scrape it off, clean it off. I will flame it with just a little torch to make sure there's not bee larvae, but varroa mites or hive beetles. Put it back in here, and it's stored for the winter. And I thought having one little shed would be fine. My front living room is filled with bee stuff. And the bee shed is filled with bee stuff. And then processing the honey, there's really not much. You've got this double screen, and it looks like a cake pan, and there's two of them that fit inside it. And you just empty that into there, and I have a settling tank that I'll put 13 gallons of honey in, and I'll let it sit for 3, 4, 5 days. While I'm doing that, I'm checking the amount of moisture, because if I have 18% moisture or higher, I'm gonna have alcohol. So if I have a batch that's high, I leave the top off, I put a screen on it, and I run the air conditioner in the house and slowly drop some moisture. So that's kind of important. Sometimes we want to sit in the kitchen all the time, then I'm in big trouble. And I think that's the bees, for the year. Winter time. Oh, and I should say, honey, totally different colors up there. So, spring honey, much lighter. Fall honey, two summers ago, we had a ton of bamboo and the goldenrod, and it was like holding up a beautiful jar of lotion. You could not see through it, it was so dark. And that changes, there's areas that have purple honey. It's absolutely amazing, it's all one big one.
What about these bees that sitting on your hummingbird feet or sucking all day long?
Thank you. I appreciate the extra food. They're going after the sugar water.
Yeah.
And they also like pool water because they like chlorine. They absolutely, their bees are very
Will that
clean.
change the honey?
Yes.
Then drinking
Yep.
sugar water?
So a lot of the companies around will feed their bees a lot. And the rule is you don't feed them when you have the honey box on. But the guys that go down south, they ship their bees down south and then they bring them back up. If I was not ethical, I could buy a 55-gallon drum of honey for about $1,300, blend it with our honey, and call it local honey, and sell it for about $5,000. It's just, there's no regulations on it. And yes, it has some local honey in it. Now our honey in here tastes totally different than,
It's delicious.
5 pounds over. It's a different honey. Our spring honey, I don't know if everybody, I'm right down the street here. We've got 6 peach trees, 4 apples, pears, plum, and the honey tastes like peach. And it's just, once the peach blossoms hit, wait a few days and pull some honey, and it's absolutely, it's like you're biting into a peach.
It tastes like chamomile.
Yeah, and oh my God, it's incredible. Sue has chamomile plants, and we started spinning her honey, and I'm like, it smells like tea in here. She goes, oh, that's the chamomile. It was totally different 4 miles away.
Is that like you get wildflower honey?
Yep, so the generic term for local honey is wildflower, because you don't really know what's in it. I do know of a person in Barkhamsted that wanted to identify her honey as a blueberry or something like that, and she sent it out, we tested, which you can do, and hers came back as cannabis honey. So somebody nearby had a large grill, and this is before it was legal. So you can test it.
Matt,
Probably some good honey.
I don't remember, it was just crazy.
I want whatever he's got.
so it sounds like that top honey box, you harvest it more than once and
Yep.
you'll do it
So
this
if
way.
I go early, what I've been doing is I've been letting them build up, because a lot of time, once you get a good solid hive, now in these lower 2 boxes, there'll be 50, 60,000 bees in it by midsummer. I've had hives that had way more than that, and I literally had 5 or 6 boxes, and every box was just as full of bees as the next one.
Oh, so you won't have just one honey box?
No, I'll do 4 or 5.
4 or 5. You'll always have 2 brood boxes?
Always 2 brood boxes, because up here, winter's long enough, they need the food. I know people that run a single brood box and feed them all winter. I can't do that. I just assume, it would give me another 100 pounds of honey per box. But I'd rather have them have the honey. it's, you know, I'm not doing it for selling honey. I'm doing it, you know, I first started doing it because I had all these apple trees and none of them were really producing. I had pear trees that didn't have any pears. I did this and it quadrupled the amount of apples. And the peaches, oh my God, it was crazy. I had a peach tree this past year, had to have 600-800 peaches on it.
And some orchards will bring bees in.
Yep, so I've actually been approached for that. And I thought I was gonna make $1 million by going up to these marijuana farms in Massachusetts and offering bees. I didn't know they didn't want it mated. They wanted all females and no male plants. Oh, well. But yeah, so there are places, so a lot of bees you'll see. Back when I was working, I had Waterbury Oxford Airport is one of my airports, and I had a tractor trailer that wanted to park his bees, tractor trailer full of bees, for the summer at the airport. Because they did their work in California, they pollinated the almond plants, almond trees, and then they hit different spots along the way to the East Coast. Everything's pollinated, tomatoes growing, everything. And then they have this downtime with all this extra bees. And we had an area that we could do it, and I'm like, no, I don't have a problem. I had to check with the FAA, but I didn't end up doing it, but because then birds come in and it's a mess. But almond honey has horrible taste. So, don't, you know, it's not like I'm gonna take almond honey. You can blend it with stuff. My fall honey, I normally will blend it with some of the summer honey. It's a lot darker, but it doesn't have the flavor that the summer honey has. With all the flowers and, you know, it's you know, knotweed and golden and the, you know, it's higher sugar content. So, and that's the other thing, if you're running fall honey, you'll notice it'll crystallize, you know, when you buy a jar of honey, you sit it in the shelf and it turns into sugar. Fall honey, the goldenrod has a higher sugar content, so it goes to the crystallization quicker. And all you do is you take the jar of honey, I put it into a pot of water, I turn on the heat a little bit. Once I see the smallest of the bubbles, I shut the heat off and I leave it in there and walk away. And then it'll, you know, full jar will be back to normal. If you boil it too long, it gets pretty thin. If you pasteurize it, and that's the other thing, if people are cancer patients and their white blood cells counts are too low, you don't want to eat honey, raw honey. You need it pasteurized because it's got all the potential for toxins. So you pasteurize it, you bring it up, I think it's 120 degrees for 15 minutes, and shut it off, and it's pasteurized. And I've done it for people and it works, but just another little side line.
Yeah, I have a question. How long have you been doing this?
Have I been doing it? About 10 years.
It seems so time consuming. Do you have a job besides this?
Not anymore. I have bees. No, I did it. You know, I had 4 airports under me, and I was doing this. It's just got to make time. You know, at the end of the day, quickly go through. It's easier to go through the hives during the day because everybody's out for the flight. So I go into a hive and we've got half the population. It's a big difference between 25 and 60,000 bees when you're going in. So best time. So on the weekends, I go in and check them.
And I have a comment too. I remember as a child going to my like great aunt's house and they had it. And they had a box in the house and you would break off and it was like the wax and
The honeycomb.
Yeah.
So
do you have that?
on these, well, take this out, and I put one of these that's just like a sheet of plastic, a sheet of wax. And this will have a couple wires back and forth. I lay the sheet of wax that's got the same stamp in it, lay it on it. I hit a little voltage to it, it heats up the wire a little bit, the wax melts in. I put it in here, and I leave it to the bees. They will build the comb on that sheet of wax. So the wax is regular regular beeswax. So you're not biting into the plastic. People don't like that.
Well, that's what I was thinking. What happened to never doing it? I was in the shop.
Yep, it's a different way, I mean, if I leave this off, they'll build it, they'll fill this with wax. And most of the time, it'll kind of look like this, but it'll be wavy. What these help you with is all of these dimples being the same size. They're not the large ones where they're gonna be making drones. So they will follow the little shapes and build that comb out. And they'll say, all right, well, yeah, this is for a queen, for a worker bee. So if I leave it to them, and you can actually buy these for making drones. That's a whole nother thing if you want drones, because what happens in the drones is they're easier for the mites to adhere to as larvae. So you take this, and it's got all the larger size, and all of a sudden you got a full sheet or full frame of drones. That's where most of your larva is most of your hive burrow mites. You take it, and you throw it out, burn it, and it gets rid of a huge amount of burrow mites are the nightmare.
Do you make enough to sell, or do you just give?
Yeah, we sell, just word of mouth. Last year I didn't do as much, I did 300 pounds. But on a good year, average is probably 400. But I feel like give away a lot. Because again, I'm not doing it for the trees and all.
So Matt, how did you get into this? Or why did you get into it?
Our old selectman told me I needed bees. Had to blame Don for something.
So if all your bees died off and you gotta start over again,
Yep.
how many bees do you need to start over again? How long is it gonna take you to get
So-
full production?
As I said, the packages have 15,000 bees in it, and I'm gonna pick up 15 packages, 16 packages. One for Sue and 2 for others, but I'll put 13 times 15,000 bees. And they go great in the back of the Jeep. My wife doesn't complain. Because driving,
200,000 bees in the back of the Jeep?
50,000 in each one.
in each package.
Well, but all of your bees die off?
This year they did, not,
Oh,
normally
but
they carry over.
the little
The
football.
cluster, yep,
Yeah,
the cluster
okay.
will carry over.
Okay.
Typically you have a 30% die-off. This year, just
Oh.
whacked me hard.
And because we had that big cold snap?
I don't know, because Sue's bees, she's got 3 out of 3 hives this year.
That's tough-
It's
tough
the way
bees.
mine were set up, you know how they're up on the hill?
Yeah,
I think a lot of my wind was out of the southeast,
yeah.
and it just got too much moisture, too cold.
Yeah.
Cold doesn't kill bees, moisture kills bees.
Yeah.
So moisture and cold, and how I get into it is I had the apple trees that they weren't producing. And I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna get a hive or 2. It's addictive, it's completely addictive. And, no, I mean, if anybody wants, I pick up bees in April 12th, and I'll be putting them into the hives. If you're bored on that Saturday, I'll be up there midday. It'll be a quick thing, because I gotta go to Rhode Island to do more, but, we'll be putting these, and it's just kind of interesting.
So is there any natural,
Bees?
honey, like
Yeah.
in the forest that just? and to
No,
what
there was
extent?
a big die-off, and they've been dying off for years. But there are wild bees. And
Around here?
Yep, and you'll see them in knots of trees. Jones Brothers, or Jones and Sons, I went down there to pick up a piece of metal, and right across the street there was a knot in a tree and a huge hive. So they are around. They probably came from my house originally.
Or mine.
Yep. Bees will fly, 5 miles to go get honey. They'll visit a million flowers in their lifetime. And as they're making honey, all right, so here's a question for you. It's not our bonus question, but how many bees for a teaspoon of honey? Somebody's gotta have a guess.
A teaspoon of honey?
To make a teaspoon of honey.
Couple of
Now,
thousand?
given bees live about 40-45 days in the summer, worker bees, they get about 500 miles and that's it. They flew their wings off and they give up. And as they get older, they won't even go into the hive. They'll hang out, they'll do stuff. because they don't want to come back and make a mess of the hive and die there. What, no guesses?
500.
5,000 bees for a teaspoon?
Yeah.
Little high. No, it's about 12 bees, their lifetime. So 480 days total, each of their lives, to make a teaspoon of honey. I got 24 bees in here, my tea.
So, but,
That's nice to
So
think about,
about
right?
12
Isn't that nice to
bees,
think about it?
their entire life to make 1 teaspoon of honey. So yeah, 12 times.
Matt, what's the,
you were talking about the smoke. Oh, that's okay.
That,
what's the organization look like in a beehive? You've got a queen, you've got a
so
queen.
you think the queen is the boss, but it's kind of like a democracy, because the body says, hey, this queen, you know, yeah, she's great, she's yelling at us and telling us to make more honey, but we're tired of her, and they decide to oust her. So even though she's in charge of the day-to-day and making all the babies, the body of the hive can oust her. The drones, they're just cruising around, crawling over everything, eating anything they can.
What's their purpose?
They mate once, the drone, when they sense the queen is out, so they'll be out flying around. They don't have a stinger, so you can pick up a drone, and the difference, and I don't have a picture in here, they're a little bit bulkier than a regular worker bee. They have the same coloring, and the bee color varies light to dark, but the drones are a little more burly. They've got more eyes, they've got more eyes, they've got 5 eyes, because they have to see the queen flying and be able to, you know, catch up to her. They mate once, their male appendage explodes. She flies to a branch after going through 12 or so suitors, and she lands on a branch, and then all the other bees will come, and a couple bees will start hunting, looking for a new home. This on a swarm. And they'll come back, and they'll say, hey, we got something, but I already stole it, because I put it in a box. And they'll come back, it'll take them time to settle down. So I'll leave the box out for all, you know, the bees that are out searching to come back and get a hive. So the hierarchy is workers that have all kinds of jobs. So the first 3 days of a bee's life after they emerge, which hatch, they're cleaners. They spend 3 days cleaning their cell, making sure it's spotless for the next round of bees. Then they move into making wax, and they make wax from their abdomen, and they just slough it off. Then they move into their specialties. Their guard bee, their worker bee moving honey. They'll move honey from the entrance when the bees come back. And like I said before, there's 2 stomachs in a bee. Their first stomach is just for the nectar, and then the second stomach is for them. But the first stomach, they regurgitate into another bee picks it up, and then they carry it up and put it away. So that's their next phase of life. And then as they get a little bit older, then they are allowed to go out and search for flowers, and fly around. After they get about 500 miles, and you can, if you're really nuts and into it, with me, you can look at a bee and you can see that it's older. Because if you look at the edge of the wings, they're not that smooth edge, they start getting tattered. And that's from all the miles. 500 miles.
So what do they bring back?
So they're out, I send all my bees down to Ted's house, because he's got flowers down there. They'll bring back nectar, which is a fluid, and that's what goes into the honey, and then they'll bring back pollen. And the pollen, and people collect pollen, and they do pollen traps. They'll bring the pollen inside into one of those cells, and the other bees will take it and mix it with a little honey, a little moisture, and make this bread type consistency, bread dough. They'll pack that into one of those cells, and they'll do a whole area. and you'll watch, the queen will come in and she'll start laying, going out in circles. And I don't know how she knows exactly, but she will do a beautiful pattern of eggs. And the eggs will hatch, and the larva will start eating that bread pudding or royal jelly. And they'll be in there for 14 days, 17 days. And then once they eat enough of it, and other bees are coming over and bringing them moisture, there's caretaker bees, they'll feed the bees. Then they're ready, they cover their cell, and that's when they make the transformation from a larva into an adult bee. And then they emerge from there, and that's where you have to worry about the varroa mites, because the varroa mites will get right on the larva. And now this bee comes out, and I'm like, all right, I'm ready to face the world, and she's already got a bunch of larvae on her back. So that's why we treat. And that's why you treat over a 21-day period, because a 21-day period will take you through the life cycle of the bee, from being an egg to larva to an adult bee. So I know if I treat for 21 days, I'm gonna hit everything that's going through the hive for for bees to get rid of varroa mites.
How would I notice or know a wild bee hive? Is it
They dress
just
like
the
hippies.
movement? It's just the movement of bees in the whole of the tree, or is
If-
there something built?
No, they'll be in the tree.
Okay.
And you do have open hives where you'll see, like one of these frames, all the wax coming down, and they'll do 2 or 3 of them.
Oh.
You'll find them in barns
Oh.
where they won't, honeybees aren't paper wasps where they build a nest.
Okay.
They'll just hang the honeycomb,
Oh.
and they'll use it to store honey, and as long as it's protected from outside, the weather.
Oh.
Right, but you do see them, you can find them in trees, you can find them hanging on trees, but it's typically in a protected area.
And you said that very quietly that Home Depot is not the best place.
It's a lot of them. When they offer, I use Home Depot because a couple people that lived next door to Home Depot and had bees, we lost everything. But
Oh,
when
wow.
the plants